Fans for him.
Fans for him. All right, here, let's get Paul involved. He says, Hacksaw, you are so wrong. Staley should not have been hired.
Hot coordinator. These guys get hired every January and February. I don't know that he sold them a bill of bad goods because they were really stymied by the injury factor, and that killed them 3 straight seasons. But that being said, the stories that are coming out about the playbook being way too complicated, the young guys just not able to cope with it, that bears fruit when you look at how badly they play week by week by week. 31st in defense, 32nd in pass defense, blown coverages. So Staley was a hot guy at the time he was hired, but there's a lot of hot guys. Some succeed, others fail.
Yeah, well, you were talking about how he's a bright light, and we've mentioned a lot of other bright lights, but that doesn't mean you're a leader of men. That doesn't mean that you can rally the troops like General Patton and like, Blitzkrieg or whatever you need to do. So it just, and also Staley, he's just not a big tough guy. He's not like Dan Campbell, for the Detroit Lions.
Screaming and yelling.
Yeah. So you just kind of wonder if the players really look at Staley and thought, yeah, he's one of us, as opposed to like, just some nerd with a computer and a pencil and a paper.
So this will be interesting. We could ask Paul next time, do you hire a guy getting a second chance? But how do you defend that second chance? Or is he a retread? It's a tough call. It is a really, really tough call. Moving on.
Okay, here, let's go to Al. And he says the Chargers will be successful when they learn to run the ball more than throwing the ball. Chargers have too many injuries, Hacksaw, because they don't use their legs and shoulders when run blocking.
Well, the offensive line to me has been a huge disappointment because they spent a lot of high draft picks to develop these guys. And this season, aside from the loss of the center, Corey Linsley with a heart issue, their other 4 starters have been there every snap. And that line has not played well, and they have not run block. And this year, they did not protect Justin Herbert. He has taken a lot of sacks and more hits than he'd taken his prior couple of years. So it's a big difference. But is it teaching? Is it technique? Is it the blocking assignments? It's hard for me to believe that they can't run the football when you got somebody as dynamic as Austin Eckler. But offensive line is as big a disappointment as the mess on the defensive side of the football.
Well, yeah, you can maybe fix how they tackle, but you can't fix going for it on 4th and 1 on your own 30 in the 4th quarter. Some of the bonehead decisions that Staley made. So I'm glad he's gone. Let's get another guy in there. Who was a bright light that was actually pretty good? Is turning out to be a great coach is D'Amico Ryans down in Houston. I mean, they have a shot to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and the guy in Philadelphia, he was a hot coordinator. Nick Sirianni, look what he's done over 2+ years with the Eagles. Matt LaFleur, he walked into Green Bay. Of course, he did have Aaron Rodgers, but the thing was going sideways. They fixed that thing. I think at one point they were 33-16 before Aaron Rodgers vacated. So you can hit the jackpot with hot coordinators, but Chargers? Nah, haven't seen that lately, have we?
Well, here's another comment about who the Chargers should get. This is from Michael. He says, Bolts should also consider Jason Garrett, who helped Kellen Moore.
That's a really good call because he's a really intellectual guy. And he managed the affairs. Dallas is a very hard place because of who the owner is, and the owner thinks he knows everything about football. I thought Jason Garrett did a good job. He's a Princeton guy. He's really a smart dude. But now he's a TV guy. And on Monday morning, he can wake up and not have to worry about my right tackle getting hurt, or why can't I run the football, or my God, the media is crushing us again. Mondays for a guy who's gone from the sidelines as a coach to the TV booth looks and feels really different. So that's not a bad call if he wants to get back in it. I don't know whether or not he does. Kellen Moore, the shamrock's kind of fallen off his shoulder. Now they're looking at him and saying, your play calls sure didn't work. But then Kellen Moore's victimized because his quarterback's been hurt trying to play through the finger injuries. And Kellen Moore gets victimized because the offensive line to me, has been a massive disappointment. And Kellen Moore gets dinged because there is no Mike Williams. But he controls what they're calling. They should be targeting and throwing to Quentin Johnston 5 to 10 times per game.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Quentin Johnston's got to catch all those balls and not drop them. But Josh Palmer was hurt. So I mean, Kellen Moore is not as flashy right now. His name was in neon lights a year ago this time. Those lights have been dimmed down for a wide variety of reasons.
Was Kellen Moore offered the interim head coach job?
I don't think he was ever considered for it.
Really?
But see, at the end of the day, doesn't mean a hill of beans. They're going to fire all those people. No, Kellen Moore's on a multi-year contract. Maybe he stays because he is linked to Justin Herbert. But I think the rest of those guys will be filing applications to do his podcast with you and me next year. Next question.
Right. Okay, let's go to Javier. He says Padres having flashbacks of 2015.
Oh, this is just really tough. I hate to use the word fire sale, but they spent so wildly over the last couple of years and what they allowed Preller to do. And, they were barking at the media last year when the national media and those of us here used the word sustainability. Is this sustainable? You spending this amounts of money in a market that's only 3.5 million? The fans did their job. The fans responded. We drew 3.2 million, all-time record revenue coming in the front door for the Padres. Fans held up their end of the bargain. Those underachievers in that dugout and that batting order surely did not. Now you got a bunch of guys hurt, and now the owner passes away, and they have to roll this back because of the luxury tax. They owe baseball almost $40 million on January 21st. That's when the check is going to be delivered. So I'm not going to use fire sale. I'll throw another couple words out there that are probably going to really upset some people. I hate to think that the Padres would have created a bait and switch situation with season ticket holders.
No.
They pushed the hell at the end of the season into the fall. Buy your season tickets now for next year. By the way, the ticket prices have gone up again. Buy your season tickets. And they knew that there was going to be a rollback, and they knew there'd be probably a pairing of the roster. And that sure looks like bait and switch to me. That John Riley, season ticket check in the mail, September 1st, John Riley, do it. And all in the back of their mind, they know they got this luxury tax bill has to be paid, credit card bill comes due. And they know there's the Scott Boras crisis is out there and probably not solvable. And bait and switch.
That's a reach, I think. But do you think if the Bally's deal didn't go south, that the model would be sustainable?
Probably, but it went south, and baseball knew that the regional sports networks were on the brink of going down the drain, and the Padres were the first ones. And the Padres gave their flag to the commissioner's office and said, "We'll be the first one for the streaming plan." That's what baseball did. They spent all off season preparing if this thing happened, and that thing happened. And the Padres got most of their $60 million. That was a one-time payoff. It's a different set of numbers this year. And now I think there's 11 other baseball teams that are facing the same calamity. And of course, I give credit to Manfred and all the vice presidents he hired to come in the front door and create this template of how they're going to operate streaming. At one point, I think I had mentioned to you way back, just as this Padres thing was unraveling, baseball had what they called Team 30. They wanted to take control of the streaming of all 30 baseball teams. That's why it was called Team 30. And then suddenly the Red Sox stood up and said, "No, we have NESN Network. We're making enormous amounts of money." And the Yankees had SNY, and the Mets and Dodgers and Sports Vision. We're not giving our rights back to you. So the whole Team 30 thing kind of got put to the side. But right now there's 11 teams. But to answer your question, yeah, I think the blow of the loss of $60 million, that's huge because they had backloaded a bunch of these contracts to be paid based on the fact they were going to get $60 million 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So that's where they got. It's one of the monopoly dollar problems they got.
Yeah, a lot of the bookkeepers they're going to be crunching numbers all off season. Hey, let's go here to John Lynch. I don't know if this is the John Lynch Sr. or Jr. here, but he says, if Seidler family is tight for cash, they should sell the Padres for $3 billion. A multi-billionaire can come in and compete with a $250 million payroll and continue filling Petco. If the perceived fire sale comes to fruition, Padres will lose 1.5 million fans in 2024.
Well, John, I don't think the fire sale is going to happen because they can't get rid of the contracts they've given out. They've got 5 hefty contracts, from Machado to Tatis to what they gave Cronenworth, what they've given the pitchers. Nobody's going to take those contracts. And the Padres moved Matt Carpenter to Atlanta last week, and they had to pay $1.5 million plus Ray Kerr to get the Braves to take him. The Braves just ate the contract. Braves just released Matt Carpenter. So any transaction, say if you wanted to move Machado, who's got great marketability, they'd have to pay a chunk of that contract. So now they're in a situation they can't get out of at this point in time. By the way, a lot of people. You got Jeff Bezos' phone number? Padres sell him to. So the Seidel family says they're going to own it. They're going to run it a little bit differently. I understand that. They're fine people. I mean, I obviously knew Peter extensively, and I've gotten to know Tom Seidler a lot better since Peter's illness came back. I've communicated. But it's not for sale. But they're going to have a problem. They're going to have a problem if it's not a very good team, if they can't find pitching. It's not going to be the same team, and they won't draw $3.2 million a year from now if this turns out to be a bit of a down cycle roster because they can't afford to go get other guys. And that's on the guy that grew up in the next town over from me on Long Island. That's on AJ Preller. He did this.
Yeah, I mean they're in a pickle, but $180 million payroll is still a lot. It's a lot more than Arizona Diamondbacks
that
went to the
World
back.
Yeah, that 180 is tied up with 5 players.
With 5 guys. Yeah, right. So yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Hey, let's get another question. This is from Pedro, and he threw in $10 to support the Lee Hacksaw Hamilton podcast. Hey, according to Ohtani's contract, which GM lasts 10 years? Asking for Padre fans if Dodgers win regular season championship but melt down come playoffs. Hopeful thinking Ohtani opts out sooner than later.
Well, it's not the manager. It's strictly Andrew Friedman, or it's the head of Guggenheim that owns the team, Mark Walter. But those guys aren't going anywhere. Those are baseball lifers, and I think they'll stay there. It's got nothing to do whatsoever with whether Dave Roberts is a manager going forward. Ohtani's there, and John and I had talked. He spilled his coffee on the table one day. We were just talking about the importance of Ohtani and what was important to Ohtani. And I think it was culture. I think it was continuity. And there was a complacency with him in Southern California. He's a recluse. The Angels allowed him, and the Dodgers are going to allow him the same structure as to when he's available to the media, when he does things for the club and the community. He has this little spot in which he says, I'm available here, and that's my window, and I'm not doing anything else. He had gone to New York. He'd gone to Boston. You know what the fishbowl is? You know what the media is? You know what the energy on Times Square is? New York and Boston are so different in terms of venues. He didn't want that. So he chose complacency. He chose the culture. He chose the community. And Southern California, Los Angeles and Orange County offer him something that he's very comfortable with.
Well, do you think that might be injured again? I mean, as a hitter, can you imagine him going on the disabled list? No pitching, no hitting. I mean, that could happen, right?
You're just peeved that he didn't choose the Giants.
Well, yes, I am actually, but I still think the Dodgers, everyone's kind of praising this deal. And, to Ohtani's credit, he negotiated these things, like if the GM leaves, he can opt out. But in the end, I don't know if they're going to get that much productivity out of him, because it's still a question mark if he's going to pitch.
But he was hurt last year. He still hit 44 home runs, and he hit, 290. And when he pitched, he had a 3.14 ERA. Now, he'll rehab this year. And one of the reasons he chose the Dodgers, aside from all those things I said that began with the letter C, was their history and track record of rehabbing guys coming off elbow surgery. And they have a very good track record. So, I'm not looking at it and saying, geez, he's never going to pitch again. And they're paying him all this money. He's never going to pitch again. We don't know that for sure, but he does have a history of coming back. And Dodger pitchers coming off the surgery have a history of coming back. And dude did hit 44 home runs batting 290. And don't you wish you had that in the middle of that giant lineup?
Yeah. Well, so do the Padres wish they had it, and they just traded him to the Yankees. Hey, let's get Angel in here. And he says, Undisputed is practically the Skip Bayless and Friends show. First take, at least with a loudmouth Stephen A. He knows what he's talking about, unlike Skip Bayless, who wants to have everybody, what's that word say? I don't even know. What is that word? Swarby about him?
Skip Bayless has got a different ego, but Stephen A. Smith has ego, and he's done really well venturing from the newspaper side to the TV side. I don't think Stephen A. is long for that show. I think Stephen A. wants a late night TV show, move over Jamie Kimmel and all those guys. I think SAS is going to wind up going across the street and doing an entertainment type show, but they've hit on something. And Shannon Sharpe, it's like the old days at 690. And we've talked about this before. In the old days at 690, what made 690 great? The uniqueness of the personalities who meshed together. And I'll go back to the loose cannons.
Right.
Steve Hartman, Chet Forte, Steve Hartman, Philly Billy Werndell. That's what SAS and Shannon Sharpe are. Clash, loud, just verbose. I mean, it's magic. It's magic TV for a short period of time till Stephen A. wakes up one day and says, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, how much is Stephen A. getting paid?
$7 million, I believe.
$7 million.
Yeah, just a bit shy of what I made.
Yeah,
my ass. So it's interesting. They've hit on a chemistry like we hit on a chemistry at the old legendary Extra 690. Yeah. Dynamic talk show guys. It's not there forever, so enjoy it while it's there. And I agree with you, Bayless. I can't watch those guys. They bring nothing to the table for me. I don't watch any of the guys. I know everything there is in sports. I don't need to have guys yelling at me at 8:00 in the morning about their opinions about something I already know about, and I already have my opinions set in cement. Sorry to be inflexible. Couple more here.
Okay, let's go here to Michael. He says, I have wondered why the NBA has not already put a lifetime ban on Draymond.
Well, he's never hurt anybody. He's come close. But who he has hurt is Golden State. That's not the same franchise anymore. I mean, there's a lot of age and injury. It's crept up on them. I mean, Steph Curry's had 2 catastrophic injuries. Klay Thompson's had 2 catastrophic injuries. Draymond's been in and out with injuries. Now Draymond keeps getting himself suspended. So he has not sucker punched somebody and badly hurt somebody, but he's really hurt Golden State. And they're on the hook for $25 million a year for the next 2 years with this guy. So they got to control him. But I look at him now and it's like I'm waiting for him to go off again. And obviously Steve Kerr can't control him because Draymond's his own guy and Draymond's going to do what Draymond wants to do.
Yeah, it's crazy. Didn't he punch LeBron in the balls one time? Yeah. And then he ended up getting kicked out of that game, and then the Warriors lost that final. I remember that. Draymond should have a TV career, right? When this is all said and done.
I guess so. Yeah, they hire anybody.
Yeah.
Look at TV. Look at the 500 channels on your TV. You think that's good stuff? No, but they'll put them on the air.
They will put them on the air. But, the Warriors, you can feel it's the end of an era, right? It's all slipping away as they're getting older, and their idiosyncrasies are really just becoming a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And Steve Kerr will be filing to work on our podcast probably within a year or two because he may wake up one morning and say, no mas, no more of this.
No mas. Okay, let's see who else we can get involved here. And Pedro Rosario says it was Jackson Merrill. That's the name I was thinking about. That's one of the young kids for the Padres that could actually make the roster and be a productive player.
Yeah, this is all part of moving parts on the chessboard. They're shopping Cronenworth, but nobody wants a 7-year contract or $75 million for a guy who's had 2 straight bad seasons. Baseball's kind of figured him out in terms of holes in his swing. He hit 229 last year. And, does it help the Padres to move him off the roster if they have to pay money for somebody to take Jake? Now, maybe get a pitcher back. I don't know. But the alternative is, here's your left field glove. Go play left field. He can play anywhere. He's really good at that. He made himself a pretty reputable first baseman. And then maybe Jackson Merrill flips and becomes a center fielder. Yeah. Or maybe he's a shortstop. Maybe Hassan Kim, once they sign him to an extension, he goes to center. So they're not void of moving parts. And Merrill is the next one knocking at the door. But, Ethan Salas is 17-year-old catcher. He's years down the road. And Campusano now has to prove behind the plate that he can do this for 140 games to be the guy and hit like he hit last year rather than hit 180. So I think they have enough everyday players, moving parts, although I think they got a vacancy at first base. But, there's ways to change that. If Machado can't be the third baseman he was because of the elbow, you make him a first baseman.
Mhm.
There's ways to move some parts around. And at the end of free agency, if Garrett Cooper, the Miami Marlin, is still there or Tampa Bay Ray is still back on the open market, you go bring him back for a minimum veterans contract. And I'd be glad to have a job because he don't do this damn podcast with you. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of unique things that can happen from a 8-man roster front. But this pitching thing is a nightmare. Holy cow. They don't have enough arms.
Yeah, it's a trouble. I mean, the pitching staff is big trouble. But for me, long term, I see Bogarts going to first at some point.
Could be.
I heard some people say that when he signed the deal, he was promised shortstop the first year.
Or second base. He can play that position too.
Yeah, exactly. So, Cronenworth at first, remember when he first took over for Hosmer and when Hosmer was hurt and everyone's like, oh, Cronenworth, the throw-in and the Tommy Pham trade has turned out to be great. And now all that luster is worn off. My guess is that if he were playing short or second, Cronenworth, he'd be a lot more comfortable because that's kind of who he is.
I thought he did an admirable job as an undersized first baseman, and I think he'd be okay in left field. But somebody's going to have to play center field. As bad as Grisham hit, Grisham went and chased everything down in center. So they have moving parts. They have
Cronenworth can be the closer.
No,
Now he was the closer in Michigan.
You're not supposed to drink before you do this podcast, John.
He's going to be like Ohtani, but a closer, right?
We'll see where it goes. Hey, one more here before we put the lid on this one.
Okay, here we go. Let's go back here to Al. He says quarterbacks don't get hurt handing off the running backs. Run the ball. Buffalo and Baltimore did it on Sunday.
Well, you got to be able to run block, and that's an issue if he's making reference to the Chargers. Not an issue with the Rams. Holy cow. Kyron Williams out of Notre Dame has just been spectacular. He missed all of last year with an injury very early in the season. And I thought, he was a heavy duty guy with the Irish. I said, well, how's he going to hold up this year? He has been heavy duty since he got back in the lineup. And what McVay has done with the quarterback, with the running back, with the myriad of wide receivers, that's a pretty prolific offense that McVay's been able to rebuild it. And I keep going to mailbox every day and waiting for some message on Rams letterhead from Sean McVay. He says, dumbass, we're not going to finish 4-13.
Yeah, he could have called you out for sure. But we were wondering what they were going to do. But, talking about running backs, what about Christian McCaffrey? What a year he's having.
What a stud.
It really is. And I enjoy watching the post-game pressers with Brock Purdy because he's so low-key, so mild-mannered. But, boy, he was saying that McCaffrey should be the MVP.
Oh, very much so. You talk about a man, and I'll say this about his preparation. I've interviewed him one time. He is fanatical about being fanatical in terms of training.
Mm-hmm.
His regimen is one of the most unique things I've read about. And then, so you got Purdy, who obviously is the next Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I'm the last man in the draft, throwing for 374 yards on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And John Lynch Jr. has done a phenomenal job in terms of player acquisitions and plug-in guys. Historically, teams that are successful go find guys that are unhappy, guys on the last year of the contract, and John Lynch Jr. has done a pretty good job plugging those guys in. And Purdy is just tremendous. And now, obviously, McCaffrey is Mr. Everything. And then you got the crazy man, George Kittle, running seam routes.
Mm-hmm.
Can't cover him because he's so big and rangy. And then you got Debo and you got Ayuk. Holy cow. Have they got all the bullets in the gun? Should we just fast forward to the Super Bowl next week?
Does an AFC team even have a chance?
Well, Baltimore's defense is pretty fierce.
Mm-hmm.
And Lamar makes a lot of things happen on that side of the ball. So, yeah, I could see San Francisco, Baltimore in the Super Bowl. I can't see Kansas City in the Super Bowl. Now, when it's become very evident, the dude's not going to play a home game at Arrowhead.
Mm-hmm.
They're going on the road. They have not been on the road ever for a playoff game.
Ever.
And now Super Bowl,
yeah,
obviously. But they've not been on a road venue for a playoff game with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Ever.
Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow, I never knew that.
Well, see, you're not reading my website every day. What the hell's wrong with you?
But yeah, Niners, Ravens, it'd be like the Kaepernick one when the lights went out in Superdome.
So We got a ways to go. Injuries change everything.
No doubt about
Lamar Jackson gets hurt. Now it's suddenly a very different Baltimore Raven team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe in that case, Baltimore would have to trade for Easton Stick.
Hey, listen, item one, we want you to subscribe to what we're doing.